They don't have it yet for the Mac version. So it's just gonna go with my phone. Yeah.
I'll just have you clip this.
Oh, okay.
And you can put that in your pocket.
Sure. This is all set then?
Yes.
Oh, this is back. Okay.
Amazing. I could get up to the side.
I think you're in your bag.
Yeah.
You can do that one, doesn't it? You can do that one.
Yeah.
I see her all the time. She works on my floor. She works on my floor, so I see her all the time. Yeah. Like I see her like all the time. I want to make sure. Whoops. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Is there a way to? I don't want to pull that off.
Okay.
Like, you know what I'm saying? If I clip it, clip it here, it'd be a lot easier. So.
Let's see. We can honestly do it this way. It'll still pick it
Okay.
up.
And
Just lost a little.
I guess if we could ask people to sign in,
Yes.
just for tracking purposes.
Oh.
Can you say a couple words?
Yep.
Just like,
1, 2.
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah. And then we would have
Since she's like the
like yeah. I'm Marilyn.
I'm Faith.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So I'm going to introduce you and then we're just going to let you go. All right. So. Sounds good. of slow spell a little bit, but this stuff's starting to be slow. But then next week it'll probably, it's been crazy this whole week, and then. Yeah. I don't know what. I got a text from somebody and want me awake. So just me waving.
I did turn phones on just in case there were like sound issues.
Oh, okay.
So I can see it. But I know that you said you wanted them off. I can turn them off once it starts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like once it. Yes, like once it. Can you like turn off once it gets like so far into it that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd say once it gets like 3 or 4 minutes, it shut them off.
Okay.
Probably may have had one and then I changed it.
Oh. Hi. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh.
Where do you put that?
So you didn't put in /A, did you?
Well, I didn't take it.
Yeah, because it won't take in /A. If you just type in NOT and then hit search, like for your supplier name, not available, there is one at the top, and then you just hit select, and it should have a green check box.
Every time I put something in there, it wiped it out.
Yeah, so if you NOT and then just hit search, you are. Right?
How are you, Al?
I'm good. I'm gonna sit on the light. How are you? Good. How are you doing? Good.
Because your picture, they'll take pictures of you. Daughter Linda.
Yeah.
My son is gathering.
Yeah.
Talked a lot.
Yeah.
She's
Oh, Cherry.
I shot it. Together, we dated. Good coworkers. I know, right? How's it going? That's why we keep the other one.
We tried, we did try.
We just couldn't get many takers for not a hugger. Yeah. Not touchy feely, so we keep her two of them.
What's that?
Only one.
Yeah, sometimes it can be a little rough. What's that?
I gotta get your picture.
Oh, yeah. Give me to act like I'm talking to somebody.
Or you can just stare.
Something different every day. I won't look at you though. Or do you want me to look at you?
I don't care.
Not at all. I'm gonna walk all over this. Good job. Hi. I know.
Yeah. Yes. Doing well. You know, I should have. When we tested that volume earlier, I guarantee I'm going to talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, not going to yell at them. Yeah.
And you're good. I can control it.
I can't escape here, can I? It's a closet.
Take one and pass it. Yes.
Right, Barb?
I'm just gonna smile at him. I'm gonna make faces.
That's right. No eye contact with Barb.
Yes, that's right.
I just know that.
Right now.
Yeah. Before you back here.
Yeah. You started to say that.
Okay. Tammy, Tracy, I got this.
You must be afraid of the front row.
Apparently, it's a little bit like church. You show up late, you gotta sit in the front.
Are you gonna keep me awake?
Well, that'll be the sign that it's time to stop. So it's nothing like doing a talk like right after lunch.
Right.
And then he scheduled it for an hour and a half. I said, I don't think you're an hour and a half.
Should have
That's a long time.
sit here.
Yeah, we should. Caffeine would be good.
Oh, is it?
That entire room was full. Right across the way.
Yeah. It was.
Yes.
Hi there. Good. How are you?
Taking
That's right. I was thinking you could reuse it, but there's dates on it.
I think we should have one of these cameras facing that direction. Yeah, no, I'm just. I mean, facing them, right?
Yeah.
Adam, you and I are certainly outnumbered in this room.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
That's the spit, bro.
I should sit up there by myself and then
If I get going too like
Spit all over.
What's that? I usually don't. Like I do with my wife. All right, thanks. But no, I have my notifications on. Yeah. Exactly. Now April, well, she has hers on for every time I tweet anything. And I said, doesn't that bother you? You know, 2 o'clock in the morning. For everything. Keep an eye on me. Yeah. Shh, everybody stay quiet.
Oh.
We'll zoom in on those when it comes time. One 35. We got 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got there.
Yeah. I'm going for punishment.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Cowboys fan, so
Hey, I heard that.
much better. Yeah.
Yes,
It's been a rough decade.
who's ever had any going to Dak Prescott? That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a lot of leadership.
Yeah.
Among that organization, so. I don't get too hooked up on it. Yeah, so. Yeah.
How much Reds that mean? How much Reds that?
Yeah, yeah. I had that last year accidentally. I forgot to cancel
That.
it. You arrive late, you have to sit close to the front. That's what's that? Oh, yeah. He's got him.
Yeah, yeah.
Hogging him there.
You
can see better if I sit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get one. I'm sitting back there anyway. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, I'd like to introduce, I'm Adam Grimm. I am a co-chair on the Professional Development and Relations Committee for Classified Senate, and it gives me great pleasure to announce Chris Stewart. So take it away.
Thanks, Adam.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I want to say thanks to Marilyn as well, the co-chair, Classified Senate as well. Got a chance to have some lunch last week and talk a little bit about this and what we wanted to accomplish here. And I'm excited because I had no idea what to expect in terms of preparing. And so what I did was I put together just a hodgepodge of a lot of things that I have both written about and talked about, and the way that I kind of go about doing what I do on a daily basis with the people that I have interaction with, both as co-workers, but also people that I lead. Just a little bit about who I am and what I do. I'm the operations coordinator for Scripps College Communication, and that just means it's a little bit of everything, actually. I manage the day-to-day on-the-ground operations of our college from the dean's office. And so anything that's happening in any of our 5 schools, in any of our facilities, if they have any kind of support that they need, they'll usually come to me first. And if I can't support them directly, I'll at least know someone that can. And so I'm kind of that liaison for everyone in our college. And one of my favorite things to do that I get to do is in bringing this position on board. I'm the first operations coordinator. It was a created position when we moved into the new Schoonover Center in 2015. And one of the things that I was asked to do was to create an ambassador team of students that the dean's office would oversee, and they would work on behalf of the college. And so what I have found is that that's become really, honestly, my favorite part of my job. And the reason why is because at heart, I'm a coach. And so what I'm going to be talking, so what I had to do in preparing this talk today is figure out, okay, how could I take things that I wrote about in these books regarding coaching and teams and sports and athletics, and make them relevant to you and what you do on a day-to-day basis and your interactions on a day-to-day basis. And as I got into just thinking through it and jotting down some notes and considering how I would approach this today, I realized that there isn't a whole lot of difference in the way successful teams operate in the athletic world from the way successful coaches, people who really want to help people be the best they can be, not just win championships, but actually build people who are champions, whether you win or not. See, that's one of the things that it took me a while to learn, and I felt like I've coached ever since I stopped playing baseball. Stopped playing the year I was out of college, and I immediately picked up a youth team, and then eventually got into high school coaching, and that's where I am now. And one of the things that I noticed is it took me a long time to realize, I think, to begin to realize what coaching was about. I used to think it was about preparing people to win championships, and it was all about that. And I found just within the last 3 years, I'm 46 years old, I found within the last 3 years that really what it's about, it's about leading people. It's about helping people to be the best that they can be. And when I can get kids, or young adults to be in a good place in their life, particularly on a personal level. I mean, where they are valuing the daily success, the daily habits that it takes for them to be successful in the classroom, in their homes as a family member, among their social lives, and in the community. Then that means I'm going to get the best out of them when they're on the field. Now take that, as I'm thinking about that this week, take that and apply it to where you are here. It's no different. The same is true. And what I mean by the very first line that I put on this note sheet here is precisely what I'm talking about is what I said there, and that is all areas of all our entire lives, they affect the other areas. There is probably this phrase, work-life balance or work-life separation. I struggle with that phrase a little bit. And the reason why I struggle with that is because we don't really have two separate lives. I mean, we like to, and I'm not saying when you go home, take your work with you. I'm not saying that at all. Yeah, we need to separate it there. But honestly, who you are at home, you're bringing that to work. Who you are with your family, you're taking that everywhere you go. And I'm taking it everywhere I go. We are not two separate people or three separate people or four separate people just because we're involved in different social settings and different work settings and different community settings and then family settings. The kind of person you are when you wake up in the morning, that's what you're bringing to the table with your family. That's what you're bringing to the table in your work atmosphere. That's what you're bringing to the table if you are involved in anything else in the community, such as myself, athletics and things like that. And so it's so vital, I think, that we understand culture and how important culture is on an organizational level, on a team level. But even more importantly, I think it's important to understand what builds culture. And that's what I kind of built this talk around today. It's going to be sort of I put them on this Prezi as this dots because I kind of want to bounce around wherever you want to go. I'm going to have you help me determine what we talk about next because I have a lot of things that I could say. And I want to make sure that if there's any chance that we don't get to all the information, that we actually get to the information that you want to talk about. Does that sound good? I mean, do you watch Netflix? Anybody watch Netflix? You see the movie Bandersnatch? Black Mirror, you didn't watch it?
No spoilers.
No, I'm not going to spoil. I promise I won't tell you, okay? But what I will say is this, the premise, you understand the premise of how the movie works, right? It's really fascinating. You're actually watching, for those of you who have not seen it, you have no idea. When you're watching the movie, you'll get 10 minutes into the movie, and all of a sudden you'll see these words, these texts scroll up from the bottom, and it gives you the option to determine where you go next in the movie. So what happens is, basically the really easy one is, and this isn't really a spoiler, the kid's sitting there at the breakfast table, and his dad says, "What would you like for breakfast?" And he holds up a box of Cocoa Puffs over here and a box of Frosted Flakes over here, and the kid doesn't make the decision. The text asks you, which one do you want to pick? And so you pick whichever cereal you want him to eat, and when you pick that, the movie goes in that direction, and it actually, that small of a decision determines a lot of things later on. And so there are just dozens of those kinds of choices for you to make throughout the movie. It's really fascinating. It's an interactive film, and I've heard that Netflix is actually exploring a lot more of those kinds of things because we enjoy that interaction. And so I know in talking to Adam and Marilyn that you guys you prefer interaction in these kinds of things. And so it's sometimes hard to think about how to make that happen. And so this is one idea I have, and that is to say, okay, we got 3 main points here: culture, goals, and habits, and discipline. You start thinking about where you want to go first, and I'll go wherever you want to go first. All right, that sound good? Now, before we do that, there's some assumptions that I think we should make. And this is where I'll go ahead and take it to that. There are 3 assumptions in coming into this session that I have, and I think you have as well. And what I mean by that is 3 things that I think we can understand about each other as we begin. And the first one I'm going to give you is just one assumption about me, something that I am feeling and preparing for this, and that is I feel like an imposter. You ever heard of imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is something that I had when I wrote this book. When I set out to write a book, and I'll tell you the story about when I did this in just a little bit. But when I set out to write a book, I wasn't writing it for other people. I was pretty much writing it for me because I had stepped away from coaching. I decided to resign from coaching for some life experience that I'm in right now. And when I stopped coaching, I realized I can't stop doing this. This is who I am. I've got to keep coaching. And so I started writing. I started a blog basically, and I started writing things that I observed when I would go to games, or writing things that I'd go watch Sandlot games, and I would observe and be like, "Oh, I want to help you, coach, but I don't want to impose." And so I'm just going to go write about it right now. And I found that people were reading those and going, "Wow, that's really helpful." My brother sent me a message one day, and he said, "Hey, out of the blue, he's like, why don't you put that together as a book?" And I thought, that's a good idea. So I started compiling that. Well, then when I put it on Amazon, people started buying it, and they started asking me to come and talk about it. I felt like I'm not really somebody that can do that. I'm not an author. I don't do that. And that's what imposter syndrome is. It's just like, I don't know that I really have something to tell you all that you don't already know. I'm not assuming that you don't know the things that I'm getting ready to talk about. I'm just telling you all I'm doing is I'm going to give you some principles, just a few principles from my own life, experiences. And honestly, they've been things that I have failed in. And because of my failures and my awareness of the failure and being able to say, wow, I could have done a lot better here. So this is what I'm going to do from now on. I think I can help show other people those things as well. And so that's where I'm beginning from that premise that I feel like an imposter today. So that's an assumption about me. Another assumption I'm having about you, and you can tell me if this is true or not, you really want to be here. Otherwise you wouldn't be here right now. And so is there anyone who's being forced to be here? Are you? Okay. Let's just out somebody right now. No, I'm not, but she is. But that's good. Dedicated to their job. That's awesome. Well, I mean, the truth is, I guess, it's out of the routine, right? I mean, so if you're looking for something to get out of the routine, this would be it. So the reason I put that up there, and the reason I said that is because there's a big difference in the way you talk to an audience that has to be there from the way you talk to one that wants to be there. And there's a huge difference in the feedback you get as well. And so I can already see that y'all are hungry. That's good. That's good. You're hungry, and you I mean, not physically hungry, hopefully not, but hungry to grow, hungry to move forward, hungry to see, you know, if I sit here for an hour and he gives me only one thing that is something that challenges me, then it was worth my hours worth of time. And if I sit here for an hour and he gives me nothing that challenges me, then I'm sorry for wasting your hour. So that's an assumption about you. Now we have one about us, and that is this: interaction is welcome. What I mean by that is, I am not at all going to be offended if I'm in the middle of a thought and you have a thought that you don't want to lose, and you kind of raise your hand, and you interrupt me. I will go ahead and stop and ask you to ask your question, or interact in whatever way you want to interact. Offer a word of advice. We are here together. The way that I'm looking at this time today is, I like I said, I love to coach. And I love coaching teams. I love coaching people on those teams. And so I'm kind of going into this role today. You're my team, right? We are here today, right now, in this room, on the same team, and I get to stand before you, and it's like a little dugout here we're in, and I get to talk to my team about how to go out and be the best you can be. And that's what it's about. I mean, we are not all on the exact same team, but we kind of are. We're all part of the university team, which is the broad spectrum here of why we're here. But then as you leave from here, you're going to go out and you're going to be, interacting with your own individual teams, and hopefully you can take some of these principles with you. And so I want you to make sure that you feel completely free to interact at any moment in any time. Okay, so let's go back now, and let's begin with two really big questions before we jump into those three things: culture, goals, and habits, and discipline. And there are two questions that I think we need to always ask ourselves, and they need to be in our minds all the time. And these are questions that are relevant for today's workshop, but they're also relevant for you every single day that you wake up. And that are these questions right here. What do you want, and what are you doing about it? That's what this entire talk's based on. All right. When I say what do you want, I'm not talking about, well, I want a Maserati, or I want a Porsche. I'm talking about, what kind of person do you want to be? I mean, really. What do you want out of your job? What do you want out of your relationships, your spousal relationship, your family relationship? What do you want out of your children? What do you want out of your community involvement? What do you want out of your social life? What do you really want? And then when you consider that question as a really personal question, I mean, that's one that's going right to you directly, then the next follow-up question that I'm always going to ask, this is what the entire time is about today: what are you doing about it? Because we have the power and the ability to do something about this thing that we want. It doesn't just have to be a goal that's out there that we dream about and say, well, I hope that falls into my lap someday. That's not the way life works. The fact is, there are things that we could be doing, and they're not really that complicated. Everything, I'm not complicated. This is not going to be complex. Everything that I'm going to talk about today is really, really simple. It is simplicity. It is based on simplicity. And so when I say, what are you doing about it? We're not going to give you a whole bunch of complicated things. We're just going to talk about things that you're going to go, yeah, that seems really simple, but the simple is often the hardest thing to do, to be honest. And so that's where we're going to go. Let me tell you just a little bit more about this in terms of my story, going from coaching to writing. And I have always been involved with athletics. I've always, my kids grew up playing sports, and baseball is my favorite sport. It's always was my favorite one to play. It's my favorite one to coach, and so that's where I was involved. I'm actually involved in helping the Athens high school softball team right now. While I'm not technically coaching anymore, it was hard to stay completely away, and so the coach said, "Hey, why don't you come and help us out?" And so that's where I'm at right now. But what happened was, my son and daughter both in high school at the same time. And so my son graduated 2 years ago. My daughter's 2 years behind her. And I was coaching baseball, which he was playing on that team. So I got to see him play all the time. And I never got to see her play at all, because baseball and softball played at the exact same time. And so they would always be at a different field. I would be watching at our baseball game. And then if we would film, which we filmed pretty much most of her games, I would come home late at night and watch her play on film. So that's one way to get to see her, but it's not the same. And so when my son graduated in 2017, he decided that he wanted to play in college. It was one of his goals, and he was offered an opportunity to do that. So he's playing in college. And then my daughter had 2 years of high school left, and I thought to myself, I don't want to miss any more of her games, especially if this is it, if that's it. Well, she has since decided that she wants to play in college as well. Got that opportunity, and she's going to be going next year to play as well. But I decided to resign from being the head baseball coach, and that way I can spend time with her. It's been a real joy. It's been awesome to be able to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, the moment I resigned, I felt it. There was an emptiness there that had to be filled. I had to fill it with some way. And so I filled it with writing. And that's what really came out of this book. And so I actually want to read you the very first line of the introduction. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I remembered writing this, and remember this is kind of the basis for it. I said, this is the book that I wish I would have read before I began mentoring young lives through coaching. So what I basically did was I wrote about a whole bunch of things that I knew that I had done wrong. And I'm not talking about X's and O's of the game. I'm talking about, give you an example. I'm talking about riding along with, going with my 11-year-old son to a tournament, a baseball tournament, and watching him play, and him having a bad day, a bad game where he didn't play very well, let some balls get by him and didn't hit very well. And we had a 10-minute ride from the ballpark to the hotel. It was overnight tournament weekends. And all the way on that ride, I was into him. I was telling him what he did wrong, and I was upset about his play, and I was being, that dad/coach where there was no separation there. And I was not even considering whether or not he even cared about what I was talking about. And when we got back to the hotel, I will never forget this moment. We got back, and while we were in our room, no more than 5 seconds, and he says, "Hey, you mind if I get down to the pool with my friends?" And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so he went down to the pool, and I said, "I'll be down just a minute." And I changed my clothes, came down, and I was still just kind of upset about the way the game. This is where the adults all are, right? I'm upset about the game, the way he played, the way our team played, and everything. I get down to the pool, and I see a bunch of young men, a bunch of boys, 11-year-old boys, just hanging off each other in the pools, playing chicken in the pool, jumping in, splashing, laughing, having a great time. They completely forgot about it. It made no sense in the world for me to take something so serious like that. And I see that happening so much in the world, in the culture of youth sports. I'm not here to talk about youth sports, but that's an example of what I mean. These chapters are filled with things like that. Yelling at umpires. I went to a ball game one time in a state where I was out of town. I was speaking at a conference in another state, and so I happened to see a team practicing over, in a field here just close to where my hotel was. So I walked over and watched them, and they were actually getting ready to play. So they started playing a game, and in the middle of the game, I'm just leaning up against the outfield fence. In the middle of the game, I watching the umpires calling balls and strikes. And it's like, yeah, it's not bad. Missing some for both teams or whatever. But you have this one coach and these parents just going all over him. They're getting so invested, emotionally invested in that game, and just all over this umpire. And I thought, wow, how different does it feel for me right now that I have nothing emotionally invested? And the perspective is always so different that when that's the case, and I've been on the other side of that. I've been that coach yelling at that umpire, and it helped me to realize that it really probably isn't as bad as I think he is. I think that it's hard to get that when you have one perspective. And so really, that's just the background of where this came from. And then that was June of 2017 was when I started writing this, and then I published it basically a year ago in about April of 2018. And then I just kept writing and kept writing. I realized, there were some things I probably should have put in here that I forgot. And so that's where Coaching Life came from. And so this is more geared toward athletic families, I should say, because it's in 3 parts. I wrote specifically to the player, and I wrote specifically to the parent, and I wrote specifically to the coach. So those 3 parts all have about 7 chapters each in them. And then this one is just a kind of a potpourri of different kinds of things that coaches deal with, but not just coaches, people in all of life deal with. And in fact, a lot of the talk that I'm giving today is coming from things that I wrote in Coaching Life. And so that's where we are there. So that's my story. Now, I want you to help me decide where we go first. We want to talk about, where are we at in time? So it's 2 o'clock. So spend half an hour introducing it. All right. So culture, goals and habits, or discipline. You got a chance probably to look at that flyer. And so you saw a little bit. That's just sort of a take-home thing. And that way you can, if there's anything that you were hoping to remember, I hope that I put some of the highlights on that. And I also am going to leave you with a whole bunch of ideas for what we talked about today, practical ideas, as well as resources, different kinds of resources, things that you may already listen to or books that you may have already read. So by show of hands, who wants to start right off talking about culture and what culture is? All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? Goals and habits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, discipline. Nobody wants to talk about this. Okay, so it looks like that was 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go goals and habits, and then we'll kick back to culture, and then we'll go to this one. All right, we'll finish off with this one. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see where we get. So, all right. Whoops. Just go right to goals and habits. One of the things I wrote in this is a chapter in this book called Goals and Habits. And between the junior and senior year of my son's high school time, my wife and I knew that he really wanted to go to a school where he could study exercise physiology, and he really wanted to play baseball. And we wanted to make sure that he went, if he was not going to go to Ohio University, which he was not being recruited to play baseball at Ohio University, but if he was not going to go here, obviously with the tuition waiver, that we want to make sure that he did the kind of work that would help him to get as much financial aid at another institution as would be comparable to him coming here. That's one of the things we sat and talked about. Well, we realized it was time to have a really honest conversation between his junior and senior year because he was not getting those kinds of offers. And the reason he was not getting those kinds of offers is because his personal habits were not in line with his goal. He had a goal to play ball in college and to be able to get a scholarship to do that. We had to sit down and have a really serious conversation in the living room and say this, basically, essentially what that quote says. Every goal in life, every goal you have in life comes with a certain set of habits attached to it. Habits and behaviors. And the simple reality is that if you fail to choose to put in the kind of work that your goals require, then you got to do one of two things. You either have to change your habits or you have to change your goal. And that's basically what we shared with them is that along with every goal, there are habits that are required for that goal. And so the most important thing is habits. The most important thing is not the goal. And that's one of the things that I've come to learn and come to realize. I read a book not long ago. I guess it was about a few years ago. It's called Burn Your Goals. It was intriguing to me because I've always been a goal setter. I've always appreciated the value of having goals and understanding what goals provide for you as a person. But I also recognize this, that goals tend to be a fixed thing out in the future. And when you have goals, that's great. But sometimes when you have goals, you do everything you can to reach that goal. And then once you reach that goal, we often let up for a while. I'll give you a practical example. It seems like every year, I'm a member of WellWorks, it seems like every year everyone has the same goal around January at the end of Christmas. And that is that they want to get in shape. And maybe what's happening is maybe they have their vacation already planned. And so they went ahead and they put the vacation on the date, let's say July 7th. That's the week of vacation. So by July 7th, I want my waist to be a certain size, and I want to weigh a certain amount, and I want to look this way in a bikini, and I want to make sure that that's what happens. That's my goal. That's my fixed goal. And so what happens? We understand what we got to do. I think we all understand what we need to do to make sure that we reach that goal. And it has to do with diet, appropriate nutrition. It has to do with working out. And so you see that. And so people work really hard toward that. And those who are able to keep that, that's a whole different conversation. Those who are able to continue to keep that motivation because of that goal, maybe they're putting an old picture of themselves on the refrigerator. This is what I used to look like, and this is what I want to look like, by July 7th. And so we work really hard. Maybe we go on a keto diet. We lose a lot of weight. And we get to July 7th. We go on vacation. And what do we do on vacation? What do a lot of people do? I'm not saying you do, but a lot of people do. they just gorge. I mean, every bit of sweets you can find, every crab shack you go to and dip it in butter, and then when you have a week like that, you've accomplished your goal. Hooray, right? And then we don't even think about it again until when? After Christmas next year. And so it's this vicious cycle of doing the same thing and really not getting anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. And so what I discovered is that instead of goals, I think what's more valuable is having systems. Have a system. And what I mean by a system is it's more of a process that is a daily, small, incremental thing. A goal is about the result that you want to achieve. Whereas a system, if you have a system for the way that you want to live, if your life is built around a system, then you are you're on like a path, and you're just taking these small incremental steps. One of the ways that I've read it said before is that average people use quotes and memes and talk about what they want to accomplish. Good people have plans. I mean, we have a plan is like a map. It's like, okay, here's and it's like that. It's like that goal. Here's July 7th, and here's what I know I need to do to get there. And we get that all taken care of. But then the really successful people, they have systems. And what I mean by systems is they have a way that they have little things that guide their lives every single day. And sometimes it's every single part of every single day. And so I say goals are good for setting direction, but systems are best for making sure that you're actually making progress towards your goals. And we'll dig into that. What do I mean by that? There are a couple systems that I'll give you an example of. Have any of you by any chance, we're at Ohio University, so I shouldn't even mention the word Ohio State University, but Urban Meyer, who was the head coach of Ohio State University football team, he collaborated with a couple of gentlemen named Tim and Brian Kite. You ever heard of Tim and Brian Kite from the Focus 3 group? They basically came in. He had them come in and speak to the Ohio State University football team in 2014, that year that they won the national championship. And one of the things that they did was they brought into the Ohio State program a system for how to handle every situation that comes up, how to handle adversity, how to handle your classroom work, how to handle interaction with your friends and family members, how to handle the coaching demands and the demands of being a college athlete. And then Urban Meyer wrote a book about it, and it was called Above the Line. And what it was based around, you might have actually heard this. You see bracelets that sometimes people wear. My son actually has a bracelet, and there's basically it's three letters, and it's an equation. And those letters are E plus R equals O. Have you ever heard of that? E plus R equals O. I'll tell you about it. This is a system. This is what I mean by a system. This is an actual example, okay? The E stands for events. The R stands for response. And the O stands for outcomes. And the equation is basically a truthful equation of every single thing that occurs in your life. With everything that happens in your life, there's an event that has happened to you, right? And there are two parts of this equation that we have no control over whatsoever. The two parts that we have no control over are the events and the outcome. That's not under our control. Now, there is a little bit of influence that we can have over the outcome, but that influence comes based upon what our R is, what our response is. And so that R in the middle is the one thing that we have full control over. And so when we understand how important it is to have a really good R, a really good response, then it doesn't matter how positive or how negative the event is that happened in our lives. What matters is the way I respond to that. I always can choose the way I respond to it. And that choice is either going to be a negative one or a positive one in every single event that happens in our lives. And so that equation is something that a lot of people who have heard that, and they're actually one of the people I recommend their podcast, Focus 3. It's in the resources section of that sheet there. In their like first or second episode of their podcast, they actually talk and unpack what E plus R equals O is in about a 2-hour session. So what I just told you in 5 minutes, they spent about 2 hours on, and I would highly recommend listening to that. And so that's an example of a small little of a system. Another system that I personally use, I really enjoy, is John Gordon wrote a book 6 or 7 years ago called the One Word for Life, 1 word for the year, 1 word challenge or whatever. And how many of you make New Year's resolutions? They're not very good systems. New Year's resolutions aren't. But there is a good system, and that is to make a 1 word challenge for your life, for the system, for the year. And what I mean by that is that you take some time between Christmas and New Year's and just kind of meditate, think about what you want to accomplish for the year, and at some point during that span of time, there might be a word that comes to you. It just kind of stays in the front of your mind. It just sticks there. It sticks with you. And what you do with that word is you write it down. You look up, you just look up different quotes about it, things like that, and you think, I wonder if this could be my 1 word. And what I mean by 1 word is, when you select that word, you keep it in front of your mind, and it guides everything you do for the year. And so a few years ago, the word that came to my mind was consistency. And I realized that I was in a place where I wasn't being very consistent. There were things I wanted to accomplish. I wasn't accomplishing them because I would start out, I'd be motoring along really good, and I wouldn't stay consistent. I would start too fast and too hard. I'd take too big of a step, and then I couldn't keep that pace up, and so it just stopped. I ended up failing. And so what I needed just consistency. And if consistency just meant little small steps, then I would just keep taking those little small steps and then see what happens. And what I mean by that is just little consistency in every kind of daily routines. So that was one of my 1 word for this year is actually build. And it means that I want to build on the successes that I had last year. Build on things like I want to continue to write. It's not something I ever thought I would do, but it's something I want to keep building on that. And so that's kind of been the one thing. And what happened is I found that I actually did continue thinking about being consistent all year long. And what happened was it helped me be consistent. And then when I was consistent, now I have habits that I've created that were not there before. They were not in place before. And that's what those routines do. And so that's what a system is. A system is basically you deciding that yeah, it's good to have a goal out there, and I understand that's the importance of goals. But really, having a goal is not going to be what causes me to meet that goal. What causes you to meet that goal is going to be the system, the way that you live your life on a regular day-to-day basis to actually get to that goal. And then one day you're going to get to that goal, and you're going to be like, oh, I'm here, I made it. Okay, let's just keep going. And you just keep doing, you keep having those daily successes. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, well, let's, oh, I forgot about this. Achieving a goal is only a momentary change. We think we need to change our results, but the results aren't actually the problem. Whenever we don't meet our goals, whenever we fail in our goals, we think, well, I guess I need to change my goal then. Well, no, that's not necessarily, the problem wasn't necessarily your goal. The problem was probably the process. The problem was probably that you didn't have a good system in place to meet those goals. So what we really need to change are the systems that caused the results. If the results were not what you wanted, well, it's not the goal's fault. It was, what did I do to get there? It's that second question, of our 2 big questions, right? What do you want? What are you doing about it? And that's what a system is. So now let's talk about habits. Habits are a really fun thing and a hot topic for me right now. I just finished reading a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, another one of the highly recommended books on the resources section of that. And this is how James Clear defines what a habit is. I mean, just realize it's not just James. I mean, sure, a lot of people define it this way. It's a routine or behavior that is performed regularly and in many cases automatically. I mean, that's obviously what a habit is. Some people will say it takes a certain number of days to create a habit or whatever. You've heard behavioral scientists talking about 14 days, 21 days, whatever. There's not really any, I think, fixed time. I think it's just that when you create a small pattern for yourself of doing something on a regular basis, eventually, if you just stick with it, you eventually have created yourself a habit. There's no real exact time of when that happens. It just the only way for it to happen is for you to remain consistent with it. Is for you to keep going. One of the things we have to understand is that if we do not like the quality of our lives, the reason why the quality of our lives is the way it is because of our habits. That's what it comes. I mean, habits are so huge, And we all have good ones and we all have bad ones. Everyone creates good habits and everyone creates bad habits. We have that. And so, being a successful person, and when I define, you can everybody define success in whatever way you want, but I kind of define success as you becoming the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. That is the greatest success that you'll ever have, is for you to actually realize that every single day I am being the best person that I can possibly be. And the way that happens is by basically just deciding to take small, little incremental steps and just keep going with them. Just keep going with them. Not necessarily feeling like you have to take huge, giant leaps all the time. There's a rule that I try to live by, and it's called the 1% rule. And what I mean by that is that every day, every single one of us are either getting 1% better or we're getting 1% worse. And that is happening because of our behavior. Our behavior skills, and it is, I think, something that is so underrated. And it's something that, when I was deciding to when I was actually really kind of excited that, Adam Merrill asked me to do this, because that's really all I have to say. It's all I have to talk about is behavior skills. I'm not giving you anything that's going to help you in your job, technically. But let me ask you a question. When you get hired and you get trained for a job, what is some of the biggest focus of job trainings? What are they usually on? How to do a certain skill better, how to use a piece of software better, how to cut your budget more, things like that, right? How to be good at that kind of thing. Well, what is the number one reason why a lot of times people get let go from jobs? Does it have anything to do with any of that stuff because they weren't competent in those areas? It's usually what? Behavior. I mean, behavior skills are usually what is the number one reason why people end up either, deciding to leave or getting asked to leave because of something that occurred there. And so my question is, why don't we spend more time training people in behavior skills? Why don't we have courses for these students on behavior skills, right? They're going to need more than just the technical stuff. And so this is so vitally important that we talk about behavior. What the 1% rule is basically, I'll say it this way. I have that word specifically, how, on there. That is a 2-word question that I have decided to ask every person who ever comes to me and says to me, "This is what I plan to do. This is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be. This is what I plan to do," and it's usually something in the future. In the athletics world, it's like, what's your goal? Well, our goal is to win the league. Okay, great. Our goal is to be a champion. Then the next question that I come up with is specifically how, because that's the most important question. It comes back to that system again. So it comes back to the goal versus the system, right? So if I have this goal out here and I want to get to that goal, then I got to realize, how am I specifically going to get to that? And I'm telling you, one of the best things that I can tell you today is it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to get there by taking really small, simple, easy steps and just keep taking them. Give you an example. If we were right now out on a football field, let's imagine a football field. It's 100 yards long. And a football field has those hash marks and yard lines. So every 5 yards, 10 yards, and then hash marks every yard. And so it would take, give or take 100 steps. If I took 3-foot steps every, to get the length of the football field in a realistic way. Okay. So let's say I'm standing on the goal line of a football field, and we're playing the old game of Mother May I. You ever play that one? I'm aging myself here. We get a bunch of kids out there. Mother May I. Cross over to. I don't even remember how it goes. But all I remember is someone stands over there and they say, "Yeah, you may take 3 giant leaps, or you may take 12 baby steps," things like that. And so let's say that someone says, "Yeah, you can cross that football field, but the only way you can cross that football field is by taking 12 giant leaps." Well, I could take some giant leaps, but I'm not going to get across that football field in 12 giant leaps. There's no way. And so it's just not possible. It is impossible to do that, unless I can fly. I suppose I can't fly. But what if Mother May I says, "You may take as many steps as you want across this football field, but there's one rule. They have to be 1-inch steps. Start taking them." And so all right, so that's what I want to do. My goal is to get across the football field. So all I can do is take 1-inch steps. right? Does it look like I'm going anywhere right now? It does not look like I'm going anywhere right now. But I guarantee you this, if I kept taking these steps in an hour, I'd be up against that wall easily, right? Because I am going somewhere. And that's how we reach our goals. We make too big, we have these big glamorous, elaborate ideas about what we want to do, and then we don't take time to realize that the way to get over there isn't by leaping in one step. I mean, how many of us have a diet goal and we decide I'm gonna just cut out every single thing right now. I've got a brother-in-law who's on this thing. My family, we need to stop this right now. I'm talking about it. They always have, every year they have this, weight loss challenge, right? And it like for the past few years, they're like, well, I'm never winning this thing because I've learned how to be consistent. Just keep with it, stay consistent. But what happens is when you're not, you can lose a lot of weight really fast, right? Well, what's happened is funny is everybody's trying these fad diets, things like that, and they're trying these extreme things. I'm gonna work out every single day, and after the first day, they're so sore they can't move. And so what happens is they don't go work out again because they're so sore they can't move. They didn't do it a little bit at a time. They didn't ease into it. And so my brother-in-law, you know what he decided to do? He's like, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop drinking pop. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna stop. He drank a lot of pop. I'm just gonna stop drinking soda, all right, and carbonated sugary beverage, and he's beaten them all just because of that one thing. And they're like, how is he just eating whatever he wants? Well, all he did was stop drinking because he just started there, and then he'll cut out another sugar again later. He's doing it the smart way. So if you guys are watching that, be smart. If you want to build a house, I mean, you've got to get specific. So this is where we're at. Okay, if we're going to reach our goals, we've got to get specific. We have to really, really think through it and consider what do I actually have to do? I mean, no one does anything. No one accomplishes anything generally. We don't. I mean, we can stay on the weight loss thing. No one just loses weight generally. I mean, we don't just decide I want to lose weight and then walk in this room and then I'm down 15 pounds right now. It doesn't happen. You lose weight by those small incremental steps, like we just talked about. No one gains weight generally. I mean, that would really be bizarre, wouldn't it? I mean, just all of a sudden, boom! I just gained 50 pounds. It happens one French fry at a time. That's how you gain weight. And so, what you have to do is you have to decide, okay, this is if I'm going to accomplish a goal, I've got to get specific. If I wanted to build something, let's say I want to build a house, and I have no knowledge of how to build a house. That's not my forte. That's not where I'm at. But I guarantee you, it's not like this. I don't go to the hardware store and the guy asks me, "Hey, what do you want to build?" And my answer is some structure. Well, that's a little too general. Can you be more specific? Well, it's a house. Oh, okay, good. It's a house. Where are you going to build this house? Somewhere out there in Athens. Well, now let's get more specific. Where are you building this thing? And I've got to get specific. Well, how much supply what supplies are you going to need? I'm going to need quite a bit. I'm going to need quite a few nails. I'm going to need quite a few pieces of wood. I'm going to need quite a bit of stuff. It's just so general. It's not helping anything at all. But what happens is when someone who knows what they're doing and knows how to accomplish that goal of having a completed, beautiful home in 7 or 8 months or however long it takes to build a house, they go and they figure out exactly what they need, and they go and they have that list, and they are very specific about it, and they get exactly what they need, and they build using those exact tools and those exact items to help build the house. It doesn't just happen generally, it happens specifically. And so we have to get specific. If I want to accomplish anything, I've got to get specific. And so that is the 1%. Every single day I'm getting specific, and I'm going small steps, and all of a sudden one day I look back and it's like, look at how much I've accomplished. And we're not so concerned about the goal then. Yeah, I may have reached the goal. That's great, but look at how much I've accomplished. Let's just keep going. Let's just keep right on going. And that's where we're getting into this goals and habits thing. Now, what I want to talk about now is this, because we're all part of teams. We're all part of a team. Inside the goals and habits point, at some point, your personal life, we spent this entire time talking about you personally and your habits and your goals. And one of the things I mentioned at the beginning about culture is that whatever life you lead personally, you're going to bring that into your culture as a team. And there are certain habits that teams will build as well. Entire teams, entire organizations will build this. Whatever groups of people that you're involved in, every group and team or organization will build habits. And as an observer and as someone who's been inside of these kinds of teams, one of the things that I can tell you is that I've identified 3 habits that will absolutely destroy a team. Now, there might be a lot more than 3. There probably are a lot more than 3. But when I say 3, in my mind, these 3 are the biggest 3 habits that I see killing teams from the inside out. And what we'll do is we'll juxtapose those 3 things with 3 habits that build a team as well. Because I always like to do that. If I'm coaching a kid and they make a mistake, and I'm going to point out the mistake, then I like to sandwich it with something positive too. I say, hey, you did a great job of approaching that ball, but here's what you got to do to make sure that you field it right, and then you kind of sandwich it with you can do it, so let's get out there and do it. So we're gonna finish this portion with 3 habits that build a team. We'll finish it with something positive. And so here are, I'm just going to put them up there so you can see all 3 of them, and then we'll talk about them. The 3 habits that will kill a team. Complaining, blaming, and making excuses. I have never seen a team destroy itself faster than when these 3 things were allowed to happen. And here's what you got to be careful with. They'll start happening, and you won't even realize it until someone goes, "Well, wait a minute, I'm complaining here. I'm blaming someone else for my behavior, or something else, right? It's not me. It's something outside of me that's causing me to behave this way, or that's not my problem. That's not my job. That's not under my purview. That's somebody else's as well." So those 3 things: complaining, blaming, and making excuses. And so I want to tell you, I'm going to give you a secret that I think is going to be a complete game changer for any organization, any team, any group of people, and this is it, a complete game changer. Any team that 100% decides to completely eliminate complaining, blaming, and excuse making, they're going to go somewhere. That team is going to be successful. It is almost a guarantee. And then now here's how you do it. Okay, so you're thinking, well, okay, how can a team decide that? So here's the secret to how to do it. Are you ready for this? This is really, I told you it's going to be really complex. No, it's not complex. It's really simple, but it's really hard because simple is not always easy, but it's what's needed. And so here's how this happens. Here's how a team can completely eliminate complaining, blaming, and excuses. And it's this: you, individually, you, me, I, decide to completely, 100% eliminate complaining, blaming, and excuse making from my life. That's the only way that your team is going to completely eliminate it. You have to eliminate it. And you might be thinking, well, if I eliminate it, but none of my teammates do, then it's still not going to work. But when you eliminate it, gets contagious. No one wants to be around. I mean, and then when one person eliminates it, another person eliminates it, another person, and it starts working its way around, it gets contagious, and it happens. And what I'm saying is, this is not one of those resolutions that you try for a little while. When I say completely eliminate complaining, blaming, and excuse making from our lives, I'm saying forever. This isn't like a week-long thing. Like, hey, let's make this no complaining week. I actually had a no complaining week with our ambassador team last year, and we talked about this very thing. And I ended up writing about it. Actually, these 2 things are a chapter in this book. And we had a week where we said, we had a staff team meeting on a I don't know, we usually like Thursday nights at 9 o'clock because it's the only time I can get a bunch of students together in the same room. But we talked about this very thing. And we said, I'm not going over this because there's a lot of complaining, blaming, and excuses being made among our team. I'm just saying that I think that we've got a group of students who truly want to be the best you can be. And so let's take this step right here. Let's take this challenge. Let's take just a no complaining challenge for a week. And you try to live in every part of your day, from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep. you eliminate every bit of complaining from your mind, from your lips, and see what happens. All right? And I told them at the end of that week, this shouldn't just be a week-long goal. This is a lifelong goal, and it changes your life. There is nothing. I don't think there's hardly anything in this world that will change your life more than deciding to eliminate this. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. And I know every time I talk about this, because we have conversations. I have conversations about this a lot with people, and I know that what happens is that people are like, well, some things need to be complained about. Okay, well, okay, let's talk about that for a little bit too. Let's even if we agree that a portion of the things that we sometimes complain about are justified, all right, or a portion of the things that we have to make an excuse about or give a reason for why it happened or whatever, and it sounds like an excuse, that is justified. So just for the sake of argument, I don't really think that a high percentage of things are worthy of being complained about, to be honest. But just for the sake of argument, let's say that there's a reason for it, and we feel justified in complaining about it. Okay, great. Even if we agree on it, let's ask ourselves a question. Even if it is, does complaining, blaming, or making an excuse take that already bad thing and improve upon it? I don't think so. I mean, I've never had a situation where complaining about something makes a negative thing better. Yeah.
I've got one for you.
Let's hear it.
Whenever I work out with my personal trainer, I literally just complain the whole
But it's pushing you to get better?
It's the only way I can do that. So,
well,
complain makes me feel better about going.
So you're cussing him out, or her out.
That's one instance where complaining is okay.
I don't know that I can refute that. There's never been a moment when someone's given me an example that I've not been able to refute.
This
That's
is a challenge.
That's right. You're turning a negative into a positive. All right. Just move right along. Yeah. Well, and I want to say this too. There's a huge difference between mindless complaining and problem solving. And it's important to understand when we talk about this, because I know that sometimes when you hear this, you say, well, there are some things are bad and need to be better, right? And so how can we make them better if we don't point it out? And that is problem solving. That's not mindless complaining. What problem solving is, it's recognizing that when something is wrong and needs a solution, and so we go to the appropriate person that has some control to help create a solution, or you have some control to help create a solution, and you point it out. It may sound like a complaint, but what happens is we immediately start turning our attention toward the solutions. The difference between that and what I'm talking about, which is complaining, is that often the things we complain about, we have no control over. I'll come back at you, right? You have control over what you're doing, and so it's all right because you're creating something good out of it, right? You're creating a solution. You're getting better. You're getting stronger. And so often the things that we complain about are things like, you're trying to eat on Richland Avenue and there's 100 students just walking out the middle of the road, right? Right? You can't control that, but what do? We complain about it, and things like that. And it's those kinds of things, and that's a silly one because we understand, we all know they get worse, they get bigger, the issues get bigger, and when we have issues that we have no control or power whatsoever to influence in a positive way, to make any kind of positive change, it really makes no sense to complain about it. It makes absolute no sense at all. Nothing is accomplished through complaining. Nothing good is going to come out of it at all. And I think we all know that. I think deep down, every person knows that. It's like I said at the beginning, this isn't hard stuff. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But what happens is it's often the stuff that we already know that is simple, that's just so hard to do, that we need to be reminded of. And we need to realize that, well, if I'm not going to do this, I need to make sure I have a system for how I'm not going to do this. Let me tell you another system that's helped me in this kind of arena of not making an excuse or blaming or complaining. And it really is important for those who are in like coaching roles like myself that I tend to sometimes really get upset at umpires. Adam can attest. I don't get upset at umpires. He was my bookkeeper for a few years at the high school baseball team, and so one of those systems that I created for myself was this just this idea of pausing to take, well, three things. Press pause, take a deep breath, and practice gratitude. And that's just kind of an insight into my life. If I'm getting upset, now it's kind of cool because my watch will remind me. Does anybody have an Apple Watch? Does it ever remind you to breathe? And I usually feel like I'm pretty good at trying to stay fit and breathing, but I can tell when I'm really stressed or upset about something because I get that little ting ting and it goes, oh, breathe. Yeah. And so what happens? So that's a good reminder. But there are times when the watch doesn't tell me, but I know I got to do this. And so it's important to get up. I think just take a deep breath. And for me, it begins with pressing pause. And what I mean by pressing pause, it's like in my mind. It's like when you're out driving in your car and you're on the highway, you're on the road, and you come to a stoplight. There's red and there's yellow and there's green. And this is just a really simple way to react to life situations. We all want to go in the green all the time. Life is good. We want to drive. We don't want to have to stop. We don't have to pause. We just love cruising in the green. But sometimes we know that someone's going to cause us to slow down. We're going to start seeing that yellow light. We got to start getting ready to slow down. And sometimes life hits the red where it stops us in our tracks. And when we realize, and the good thing, sometimes you get hit with red right now while you're in green, and that's tough. Then we got to have that E plus R equals O mentality of how am I going to respond to this really horrible situation. But a lot of times we can see I'm getting upset, and that's yellow. Before I get to red, it's time to press pause. I'm going to press pause. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a way to try to take a really stressful situation and realize I can't control this. There's no sense in complaining about it because I can't control it. But what I can do is I can respond to it in a way that helps me prepare to make a better decision. And whatever needs to happen. I have nothing specific in my mind, but what I mean by taking a deep breath is kind of slows everything down, helps you focus. And then when I say practice gratitude, do you know that it is physiologically impossible for a person to be stressed and thankful at the exact same time? One of the best things that you could do for yourself is when you're angry, when you're upset, when you're stressed, take a little time and list 3 things that you're thankful for. And so one of the things that I've really tried to do, one system that I've created for myself is first thing in the morning, I've really made a commitment to get on. I'm up at 4:45 in the morning in order to read and write and just prepare, and then I go work out. And that was just one of the systems that I created that I wanted to keep. I wanted to make sure that was a habit that I wanted to make sure that I kept. And in that writing, basically it's just really simple. 3 things I'm thankful for. 3 things I'm grateful for. So that's a morning thing, it's a noon thing, or sometime around the middle of the day, and a night thing as well. And there's no better, I have found personally, and I'm not a great person, I'm not saying this to toot any horns or anything like this, because the only way that I have the ability to say anything to you about any of this stuff today is because of my own failures in these things. And so through those failures and those experiences, I've learned from them, and it allows me to then have the privilege of being able to say, hey, don't do the same thing I did. Catch it before it happens and realize that instead of going around angry all day long, or instead of being stressed all day long, or instead of allowing the experiences and the circumstances of life to be in control of you, you get in control of those things. That's what pressing pause and taking a deep breath and saying some things that you're grateful for, thinking about things you're grateful for does, is it puts you back in control of a situation that you really have no control over. It puts you in control of your own life, your own response. And that is so valuable. It is so vital. And so, yes, there are times when there are things that are frustrating, but the way that we can respond to those is well, really, there are times when complaining or when doing nothing at all is better. Sometimes it's just better to do nothing, to say nothing, than complain. It's going to be really hard to convince me that there's ever a good time to complain, unless you're working out. It's causing you to push yourself even further. So that's the three things that will kill a team: complaining, blaming, and excuse making. So I'm just going to flip right to 3 habits that build a team, and that are these. Those are these. Instead of complaining, let's create some positive energy. Instead of blaming, let's take responsibility. And instead of excuse making, let's create a culture of accountability. So let's talk just a little bit about those things. There are basically two kinds of people on every team, in every group, in every organization. Whenever you have more than one person together, group of friends, whatever, on any group, there are two kinds of people. There are energy givers and there are energy takers. There are life givers and life suckers, vampires. We like to call those vampires, right? And faucets and drains, that's another good one, right? You're either the faucet or you're the drain. I've heard a football coach use that. You are one or the other. I mean, you have no one's neutral here. You are in every group that you're in, you're either an energy giver or you're taking it away. You're sucking the life out of the room. You're sucking the energy away. And here's the awesome thing about this. You get to choose which you want to be. You get to choose. We all get to choose which of these people we want to be. Are we going to be the vampire? Or are we going to be a life giver? Are we going to give life to this place, to this room? Are we going to make sure that we are focused on helping somebody else to be the best that they can be? Because there's no greater way to give life and energy to someone else than you focusing your attention on them. That is an incredible power that you have. There is, John Gordon writes in his book, The Carpenter, that we possess the greatest power in the world, and that power is the ability to make a difference in another person's life or to change another person's life. I'm watching it all up. Just read The Carpenter. You'll love it. It's a great book. And that's so true. I mean, to wake up every single day and to know that you have the ability, you have the power to make an impact in somebody else's life in a positive way is an incredible thing. And you get to choose that. You get to choose that. But unfortunately, there are so many people who choose to suck the life out of the place, to suck the life out of the organization. And if we just really stop for a second and think, why would you do that? Why do you want to live this way? Well, just seriously. I'm kind of a realist, and I want to sit across from people sometimes and say, you realize you can choose to live a different way, and life is going to be a lot easier. Not easier. It's going to be a lot better, a lot more. You're going to see blue skies instead of gray skies. So it's going to be a little bit more enjoyable for you and everybody else around you, for sure. But I don't understand, when we get the opportunity to choose positivity over negativity, why you would choose negativity. And I understand that life is hard. I understand that. And a lot of times I think that's the comeback that people make. And they say, well, we can't be disingenuous. If I really do feel like, things aren't going well for me right now, then I'm not going to fake it and be happy. I'm not just, life isn't just about, it's not some fairy tale. I can't fake living in this type of, life is negative sometimes. Bad things happen. Frustrations are real. And I say to that, I know, of course. And there have been a lot, people have a lot of deeper, harder, more difficult frustrations in life than I. And I understand that. Positive people, however, are not pretending that negativity doesn't exist. Positive people are not saying that this doesn't happen. We're not in denial. But I think the difference is someone who chooses to be positive basically is just making the choice to not fixate on the negative. That's the only difference. We understand negativity is out there. We understand difficult life is a reality, and it's going to hit us. But I got a choice. I can fixate on that, or I can fixate on the positive. I can see, okay, it's not denying the negativity, it's overcoming it with positivity. That's what the difference is here. When people sometimes hear the words, hey, be positive or just be positive, and you go back to your teams right now and you're like, I'm going to make a determination that I'm going to be positive from now on, and they see that in you, and they're going to go, well, wait a minute, here we go. Life, it's, they might roll their eyes. It's like, okay, when you say be positive, be positive, be positive, are you saying, life is just, like lifesavers and puppies and, rainbows and that's all we're talking about? Positivity isn't saying that that's what life is like. That's so bizarre to me. That's not what we say, what we mean when we're saying be positive. Positive people are positive because life is so hard. That's your comeback. It's like, no, you know what? The reason why I'm choosing positivity is because, yeah, life does suck sometimes. And why on earth would I want to make it worse by piling more negativity on top of it? That's when you really pause to think about the reason for these things. That makes so much more sense to me. That I would choose to find the positive in that, and to create positive energy wherever I'm at, as opposed to negative energy. Because I'll tell you, coming back to sports teams, I have done this. I've created a culture of negativity in my dugouts and my teams and my clubhouses, and I've created a culture of positivity. And it doesn't matter what the talent level is, positivity outperforms negativity all the time. It does. Positive energy will outperform negative energy 10 times out of 10. It just always happens. And so that's I spend a lot of time on positive energy. Let's talk for a minute about responsibility. Replacing blaming with responsibility. I'll just say this. Over the past year, I've failed a lot. Today, I probably failed at some things. Today, I just fail every week. I fail at some things. There are things that I don't do well. There are things that there are times when I don't treat my family the way I should, with the love and respect that they deserve. And there are times when I say things that I shouldn't. I can look back over this past week, and I can think of a couple pretty specific times that I failed in the sports arena. I had a really terrible umpire, and I let him know about it. Things like that. That's a failure. But here's the thing. That one of the most important things that I can do, and this is this point right here, one of the most important things that I can do is recognize that I have failed and take responsibility for it. I did that. Yep, that's me. I failed. It wasn't somebody else's fault. It wasn't somebody. It didn't happen because of any other external thing to me. I'm the one that did it, and that's my responsibility. One of the greatest things you could ever do is take responsibility rather than blame something or someone else for whatever it is that you failed at. There's power in that. There's a lot of power in taking that and taking ownership. Have any of you ever heard of a guy named Jocko Willink? Wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. I believe it's on the list of resources. The Jocko podcast is, I see, at the bottom.
It is.
Extreme Ownership, yes. Extreme Ownership was about, and I won't go all the way into it. You can look up on Amazon and read a little bit about it. He's a ex-Navy SEAL. He now trains SEALs out in California, but has probably one of the top 10 podcast downloads in the nation right now. But the book Extreme Ownership is basically based on a moment in his career as a SEAL where he was a task unit commander, and he had to basically take ownership for a blue-on-blue that occurred in his unit. And it was a heart-wrenching story to read and to hear him tell, and it still gets to him to tell that story. But one of the best things he could do was sit in front of his superiors and say, he wasn't out on the field. It was nothing directly related to what he was doing, but he took the ownership of it. And it created an incredible positive reaction and response, and his life ever since. But so anyway, that's why we responsibility instead of blaming. I want to make sure that I mention something about accountability, because in our teams there is I think every great team is built on two things, and it's a perfect combination of these two things. And that combination is love and accountability. I know it's weird to say love in a business environment, but I have found this to be true. When I love what I do and the people I'm working with, I'm not saying like them. You always have to like them, right? When I love, when I am choosing to make sure that I am loving everything about who I am and because it's about what I'm creating for myself here. What we're talking about is the person you're creating for yourself. We're not talking about the external factors that frustrate you. We're talking about you loving who you're becoming because you're in charge of that. When I love that and I bring that with me, and we build that kind of a culture where we work, it makes it a lot easier to create something called accountability. To realize that, I know that you have the team's best interest in mind. I understand that you have our team, our organization's best interest in mind. And so when you point something out to me, I understand that it's not personal. I understand that you're just holding me accountable to be the best that I can be in my job, in whatever it is I'm doing. And because of that trust and that love and that combination that we have, that we both love being here, love working here, we understand each other, we understand that we have that, then it creates this culture of accountability. And it's hard to create a culture of accountability when we don't have these other two things. We don't have positive energy and no one's taking responsibility for anything. It's really hard to have this. And so it's a lot easier to just make excuses for why things are going so poorly. It's not my fault, it's not our fault, it's somebody else's department, it's this or that. But when we just focus on who we are, creating positive energy and taking care of our responsibilities, man, it makes this accountability thing happen. And we have all three of those things. Those are 3 habits that will build an extremely strong, I call them championship teams. Whether you go out and, in the sports world, whether we ever actually win a championship or not, when teams have this, in my mind, they're champions. People are champions, because that's what teams are made of. So, all right, I'm going to pause there for a second, because it's about 2:45. And what I want to do is, instead of, if you want to hear about discipline, I'm not going to talk about it right now because it's a huge thing that I want to make sure that I cover effectively. But I also want to make sure that we create some feedback opportunity right here. I have a slide here that talks about these 15 ideas of how to be the best version of yourself, the best version of who you are. And I would love to go into those a little more specifically, but I don't want to take that time away from any questions that you might have or any comments that you might have or anything that you might want to add, ways that because really, I've talked a lot, and there might be some things that you say that are going something that you have to say that's going to help someone that's not on my list of things to say here. Okay, so does anyone have any questions or comments right now before I talk about some of the resources? Hey, Jen.
Hey, so
Wait 1 second.
Oh,
Before we ask questions, can I have you hold this?
Who, me?
She's
the
gonna.
question person?
Yeah. Keep your mic on.
Make a comment. All right. Oh, cool. I thought that was a dust blow. Yeah. A little tangled there. It's like Chevy Chase's Christmas lights. All right. Yeah, because this is being live streamed, and so I guess we want to hear the question on the video. And I think it actually is something that you can go back and watch too. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it'll be on YouTube. I don't know what the link is, but yeah, you sent the link. Okay.
Okay, great. So I guess my question is, in listening to what you have to say, so I have 3 children, 2 are in sports, all year round. When you're trying, number 15 is catching my attention, how do you help others be their best version of themselves when, you're still trying to figure it out? And, what are the highlights that you would recommend, at that mindset? Like, what can I take home right away that are quick grabs that are something that you can put in action?
Yeah, I think if we go back to that's a really good question. When you know that one of the hardest things to do is to take who you are and who you want to be out in the business world or your social world back home, I think, because it is where the people live that know you the best and see all your failures. And if you try to suggest something like, hey, we're just going to be positive, they're like, well, Mom, you were negative this morning. And then it's going to write that on you. And understand that. The hardest place to create change sometimes is at home, because we're the ones that see all one another's flaws. And so one of the things that I think that we can do is just be honest with each other and say, and I'm talking from personal experience. I actually told my family, listen, here's my goal this year. And I want you to hold me accountable to it, but I understand that you are going to see me fail. And just because you see me fail doesn't mean that I'm done or I'm giving up, or that failure is part of the game. Failure is part of life. It's part of it. And so we got to understand that failing isn't always, it isn't always bad when we fail. If I hadn't failed, I wouldn't have written these 2 books. Yeah, and that's, so we learn from it and we move forward from there. And so I think that we establish that from the beginning, that, I want to make some real change in my own life, and I want to be an example for you, because I want to help you be the best you can be. So let's try this. Let's just try this. And you just kind of throw out an idea. And maybe let's go back to that, like the E plus R equals O idea, right? Let's try to live by that. We're going to write it on a piece of paper. We're going to put it on our refrigerator. We're going to put it on a bathroom mirror or whatever. And we're going to use it as a reminder to whenever we get frustrated, let's remind ourselves that the thing that's frustrating us is probably something that's outside of our control. And we may not even be able to have a whole lot of impact on the outcome of it. But what we can decide is how we're going to respond to it. And we have a choice. We can respond positively or negatively, and which one we're going to choose. And then say, let's live E plus R equals O for a week. Let's give it a shot. I think that's one of those ways to take that little step. I mean, you think that would. I know that when we, a few years ago in my own home, we all read that book, the one word for, I think it's just called One Word. And then he has another one followed called One Word for That, John Gordon, Jon Gordon. And we all decided to create one word for the year. And what was cool about it was, because we all decided to do it, I would every now and then, it was my son's first year of college, I would every now and then text him and say, how you doing with, and I would ask him about his one word. And he, and then he would respond, oh, pretty good. And I'd say, no, really. Because then you got to respond again. Because I'm telling you, I was inconsistent today. That was my word. And so be honest with me. And it creates that open dialogue to hold that accountability that we talked about. So yeah, that's just the way. I think when we all realize that, yeah, we're all going to fail sometimes, but it doesn't mean that we're not trying to get better, a little bit better every day.
I don't know if I need it. Am I loud enough?
Well, hold that up there. I can repeat it. Can we do that? Go ahead and I'll repeat it.
Well, I was just going to say, just to add to your bunch of coaching handout, if you will.
Yeah.
There was a really wonderful line from a singer from Queens of the Stone Age. I don't know if
yeah.
actually listened to Queens of the Stone Age. The lead singer, Josh Homme, who's a very talented man, he did a concert at San Quentin Prison. And a lot of people were like, why are you going to San Quentin Prison to give a concert to these convicts? And he had said, I quote, I have it on my phone because I like it so much.
Yeah.
I've had my own troubles in my life, and I understand the thin, blurry line between being out on the streets and finding yourself in a situation. It really doesn't take that much. Home added, I've been there and I understand that, but I would say this. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from bad decisions.
That's awesome. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from bad decisions. I love that. Good stuff. See, and I see somebody else writing that down, so we're helping one another here. That's good. The interaction is happening, Adam. It's like, how's it going to be interactive? I'm like, I don't know. I just like to talk, so it might not be interactive at all. So, yeah. Anybody else?
I just had something to add.
And that microphone right there, so she probably.
So maybe you can hear me. A dying man once told me, a friend, that when you get angry, you're using so much energy being angry, but when you're all done being angry, what made you angry didn't go away. So, I think of that sometimes when I get angry to help put things back in perspective.
Right. Absolutely. And to add to build on that also, I've noticed that there are things that most of the times the things that make me angry are not deep things. Now there are things that happen in the world that kind of righteous anger sometimes, and you understand that, but a lot of times the things that make you angry are silly things, and 5 years, well really sometimes it's like a week down the road, you look back and you're like, that really wasn't that big of a deal to get angry about. And it's that perspective thing. It's so different. It's incredible. So.
The other thing he shared is every day is a gift.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When you wake up and every day you see that, I love. One of the most fulfilling things to me is I on my way up the hill the other day in the morning, and I flipped on Twitter and I was looking through it, and I saw one of my old ball players. He just tweeted, "Thank you God for another day to live," and it's like, that was pretty cool. That this, because I remember what he was like when he was in high school. that was not, and you didn't think you were ever having an impact at all, and you see that. It's like, okay, now he's 23 years old, and he gets it. He gets it. So, yeah. So, awesome. Well, what I have provided for you in the form of one sheet of paper is underneath the resources column there are podcasts that really impacted my life and continue to. And I'm a full believer of giving time to podcasts and obviously reading. There's one podcast actually is called Read to Lead, and his slogan, Jeff Brown's slogan, is "Leaders are readers and readers are leaders." And that's the truth. I mean, if you're not satisfied with where you are in your career and you want to take on more of a leadership role, the best way to do it is to start reading more. If you're not reading, you're probably not going to lead anybody. But people who read tend to find themselves in leadership roles. It's a simple thing, and it's a simple point that he makes. And so what he does on this podcast is he reviews a book a week, and he has an author on. He reads a book every week, and he has the author on, and he talks to that author about the book. Sometimes they're books that are relevant to my life, and I listen to it. Sometimes I listen for 5 minutes, like, no, not relevant to me, so I'll listen to something else. And that's the beauty of the podcast world. It's the beauty of books. I mean, honestly, I used to think that I was wasting my money or my time, or wasting my money, or I wasn't getting the full benefit of a book if I didn't if I didn't read the entire book. And I'm not there anymore. If a book's not catching my attention, or if I feel like I've got the full thrust of it in the first few chapters, I don't feel bad about putting it down and starting another one. And I don't think it's an attention span thing. It's a different way to read. In fact, I actually said that in the introduction of this book. I said, as the author, I'm giving you permission to read it however you want. If you look at the table of contents, you're like, and you mark a few chapters that I think that looks interesting to me. Read it, bounce back and forth. Read it. There's no order to it. That's why I wrote it that way purposefully. It's basically every chapter has a different topic. There is a little bit of flow, like I put the 10 habits or 3 habits that kill and 3 habits that build back to back in there. But for the most part, it's all over the place, and some of it you may find relevant, others of it, I mean, if you would choose to read it, you may not. So that's up to you. But so take a look at that stuff. And also, I want to say this: anything that you can send to me, I'm always looking for ways to get better in all these things we've talked about. And so please do that. My email is stewarc2@ohio, and so please send that to me. And also, I'll give you this. I'll tell you this. This will be the last thing I tell you. The students that I lead, I started with them a little text messaging, like daily morning message thing with them a few years ago, and it was just for them. It was just for our student ambassadors, and the ones that graduated and went on asked if they could continue to receive it. I said, yeah, sure. And then the ones that came on, the new ones, they started telling their parents about it and their friends about it. And so other people started signing up. And so it's just kind of morphed into like a daily Monday through Friday morning message of just like a quick little, 180 characters morning motivational message. If you would like to receive it, I'll tell you how to do it. If you send a text to 81010, basically that's the number. It's a free, unless you're paying for your text. I don't know. People may be paying for their text still today, but depending what the plan is. But it's the number that you would text is 81010, and in the message you put the @ symbol like in front of the Twitter handles @CMS Champs, CMS CHAMPS, and then that would get you signed up for it. I think it's called I don't know, CM Stewart daily message or something like that, and it's just something that. It's pretty cool because every now and then I'll get a reply back from someone that graduated 2 years ago and say, hey, that message this morning was something that I needed to read, and so it's pretty cool. So to do that. Welcome to. Oh yeah, sorry. The message portion the @ symbol. I can't write that down anymore. The @ symbol and then CMS. That's my middle name is Christopher Michael Stewart. Champs. CHAMPS. And the number is 81010. Text it to. So. Cool. Anything else? Nothing else?
I just heard on a podcast I've listened to while I was working today that she said that no matter what has happened to you in your life, which you probably may not have had control over, that you have the control and the power to do from here what you need to do with that.
Yeah.
And,
You have control over your response
mhm.
and moving forward. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I don't want to leave without saying thank you. It's always cool to have an audience that actually wants to listen to what you have to say, and I look forward to running into you all even more. If you're ever in Schoonover Center, please tell those students that you want to say hi to me, and I would love to come out sometime. So sometimes I'm out there. So. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'm glad she did.
Yeah. It's closed right now, right? Yeah. I'm on the 5:45 meeting, so I'm usually there when the door opens. In fact, it's hard to get students. Yeah.